Yo, what is up, everybody? Today we are now doing part 3 for if Ichigo was raised by Sosuke Aizen. Last time we had left off near the end of the Substitute Shinigami arc, as everything that Ichigo had been relayed to by Aizen, which he had planned, had been going really quite smoothly, right? Everything is going as expected. And now Ichigo is now in the care of Urahara, forgive the redundancy. And without further ado, guys, let's just really get into this. If you have any ideas on any future what ifs, I know I have a few people commenting some pretty decent ideas, so feel free, really. And without further ado, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So we start or resume this what if as Ichigo wakes up in Urahara's shop. He takes a few seconds to look around and he knows where he is and has a grasp of what occurred. Everything went just as he planned. And now Urahara and Tessa are treating him pretty much. And now Urahara will explain to him as he plays along, acting shocked and eager to go save Rukia, and obviously them not really realizing. So, or maybe Urahara, but obviously not really Tessa or Yoruichi. So Urahara would see that Ichigo has unlocked his Shikai, and like I said, I believe in the second part he would go along and unlock his Bankai, all that good stuff, right? So during this 2 weeks training period, pretty much Ichigo would enhance his strength and his, obviously to match the level of his IQ. I mean, that's his ultimate goal. He's always been quite smart, and he always has thought ahead and was quite creative and clever. So now he just needs to get stronger, really, and have a more diverse amount of techniques. Right now, he's learned the Getsuga Tensho, and he's so far working on using the Getsuga Jujutsu, which is quite hard with only one blade. So he's sort of trying to figure out how to really access and use that ability. As he's also learning a lot of Kido, as Urahara. He literally makes Kido. That's literally what he does. I mean, he's a scientist. And Tessai was a commander. He was basically the captain of the Kido squad, which is a feat out of its own. I mean, he had Kido, which manipulates time. So it's quite impressive. I'd say he's quite underrated when it comes to Bleach verse. Like, he's easily above Soifon, Shinji, and some of the lower tier captains. And I'd say he would definitely do a lot to some of the mid-tier captains, like Byakuya, and I'm trying to think of some other ones, like Ukutake and Shunsui, possibly if he was in Shikai and didn't really use his Bankai, though I assume Tessa would have some sort of readiness if that were to occur, since he's never really shown to have a Zanpakuto. So yeah. Now, without really, I literally just got into a tangent for no reason about Tessai, not really a known character. So, I mean, though we are pretty much explaining the training arc here. So, about 10 days go by, and now it's the day of the festival. Ichigo's friends and his family are down there, and, they're having an interesting time. And it's about a day before they go into Soul Society. And obviously utilizing the Dangai, it would send them Like, it would pretty much reverse time for about 10 days, which is quite good for them. But this is about a day before. So right after the event would take place, it was enjoyable to say the least, I guess. Not really much to say, as Ichigo would be outside Urahara's shop, as he wants to really talk to Urahara, see if he can learn more about him, since Aizen himself said that Urahara was smarter, or if not, or at least on par, if not smarter than him. And Ichigo is quite curious. I mean, he is about 16, 17, and well, man, that age with that much knowledge, obviously there'd be a lot of questions, like guys, and like, why would he think that Ichigo was why would Aizen think that Urahara was smarter? He really wants to know. That's sort of the disadvantage compared to Aizen. Urahara, due to his young age, he doesn't really master that patience too well. So he sees Urahara and is showed it, and obviously they sit down for tea and everything, and he starts talking to him, right? Asking him what he thought about the system in Soul Society, because he used to be there. I mean, he has a Zanpakuto and everything, and he has Ryotsu, so the only place he could have been is Soul Society. And Kisuke would correct him on his deduction, telling him that he used to be a captain and was actually the head of the research and development department. And Ichigo would point out that Tessai knew a lot of Kita, meaning he is from the Kita squad, which is now part of the Squad 5 division. And same with Yoruichi, the person who was watching from afar in cat form, right? Which he noticed quite well. As Urahara would really just sort of assure Ichigo, saying that he was right. As Ichigo would start to talk more with Urahara about how the Soul King is, like, not really directly, but talking to him about the actual leader of Soul Society, the deity. And Urahara wouldn't really say too much. He would either joke about it, as we see, or he wouldn't really say much, because he's not going to tell Ichigo about the Soul King. I mean, it's quite obvious. Why would he do that? And Ichigo was already prepared for that, right? He sort of realized Urahara knows something. He doesn't say it, but he acted accepting, and just really explained himself, saying that he wanted to know more about the terrain he was really invading, as they are invading Soul Society, a pretty much a government. It's like invading a different country, and there's only a few of them. So at this point, obviously, he would leave, and Yoruichi, or obviously Urahara at this point, would tell Yoruichi to go with them. Obviously, Yoruichi had been training Chad and Orihime for about a few days here, and they improved in the relatively the same way as it did in the canonical timeline, in which now Urahara would get the idea for Yoruichi to go along with them, right? Just to make sure, right? And tell him, like, anything that happens, anything that even seems off. So the next day, they would all be up quite early. And obviously, Isshin would give him that charm. It was like the Quincy charm it was. And he would be on his way. So once he would head over to the Urahara shop, he'd be met by none other than Ryu, Chad, and Orihime. Now, if you're wondering earlier, I referenced Isshin, even though the point of this what if is for that purpose is what if Ichigo was raised by Aizen. And really, this is only quite recent. After he returned back to Karakura town, it was really bound to happen at this point. I mean, it's been 9 years. It would make sense. So as he's getting ready with everyone, the black cat, the same one he saw yesterday, would accompany them, jumping on Chad's shoulder. as they would prepare to leave. So Ichigo would reach into his bag, preparing a certain cloak, as he would put it on. Not really wearing too much clothing. He's quite experienced when it comes to Dangai, though he doesn't want to output that sort of appearance, because that would be really suspicious. So the Dangai portal would be open, and they would enter, really, as they would walk more like a jogging pace. They would jog throughout the Dangai world, trying to go, to the other side. Since they don't have a Hell Butterfly, it is much harder. Though Yoruichi, being the knowledgeable Soul Reaper she knows. So she's basically leading them through the Dangai. As they're about a quarter way in, they would hear and look behind them to see the cleaner. Yoruichi would tell them, to just start running pretty much, and to not look behind them as they start running through the corridors of the Dangai, right? As it starts to get closer and closer, and it seems like, it's about to catch them, Ichigo would pretty much use a technique given to him by Aizen, as technically both of them are transcended in the fact that Aizen managed to destroy the cleaner in his butterfly form. Not really butterfly form. Actually, no, it was his butterfly form. I was thinking of a different form. And he was able to destroy it. And Ichigo, well, obviously, having his own sort of transcended Ryatsu, he wouldn't destroy it, but at least sort of create a barrier to, buy them time, as Urahime would sort of catch on to this and use her Shun Shun Rika in the same way she used it in the canonical timeline. And as they, it would buy them about a minute as they would get to the other side and make it. Obviously, Yoruichi would still pretty much scold them, as she does and can, because doing this type of thing, it is quite risky, so it's probably best not to try at all. Though they were quite successful, so she didn't really, scold them for that long, but it was quite shorter. They would make their way into the village in the West Rukon district, as they would make their way to the Shiba household, but they don't really know that yet, except for Yoruichi and Ichigo, as Aizen sort of knew that they were coming from the West Rukon anyway. So they would find an old man, as they would stay there for the night, and everyone was a bit confused because all the Rukon citizens really didn't eat. So whenever it was time for them to actually eat, then they would. So what would occur next is they'd spend the night there, and about halfway through the night they would hear a bunch of ruckus, and they would hear Ganju, right? Obviously the same thing happens again, where Ganju would pick a fight with Ichigo, as they all look like Soul Reapers except Ryu and Chad and Orihime, which is pretty much half the group. So it was mostly Ichigo in his Shinigami outfit and all, in his Zanbakuto, in which, Ichigo in this time, he wouldn't be as aggressive, and aggressive to say, like, he wouldn't waste his energy fighting him, really. And what he would do is he sort of, I don't know, I said sort of twice. It's stupid, but he would use his Ryatsu to intimidate Ganju, and this would actually work. I mean, someone as weak as Ganju, it shouldn't be hard for Ichigo to impose his Ryatsu onto him and intimidate him, which is what would happen here. So after this, he would run away on his whore, telling him he'll be back by dawn. And obviously they wouldn't really care too much. They would obviously head over to the Shiba household. They did not want to be here when he got back. Not that he actually was going to do anything. He just save their energy and the time if they just went over to the Shiba household. And by the time they made it there, it was about sunrise. So they were fine, really. They would make their way to the entrance when the two gate guards, forgot their name. It's like, they have really similar names, and the only difference is like the first few letters. I just can't remember. It's like Kohaku no. I'm not even gonna try to spell it. Mostly gonna butcher it, so I'm just gonna let it go for now. But they would enter, and obviously because they noticed Yoruichi, and they started bowing and everything, apologizing. And once they entered, they would be met by Kukaku Shiba, and she would tell them that she would brief with Yoruichi about their plan, and they would have the same dialogue. And they, since she knew it was Urahara, obviously she would allow it. So they would start practicing on the spirit ball energy, and since Ichigo obviously had been training with Urahara, and he already had, got his Bankai in 3 days and spent the rest of the day training on Kido, there had to have been some spiritual pressure mastery there. So in Urahara, you're reaching Tessa's eyes, this would be pretty simple for him, or at least not as hard as it is at the first time in the canon timeline. So he holds the rounded ball as he remembers a tip he had received from Aizen on how to readily control his spiritual pressure, right? You had to think of it sort of something like a river, right? Not sort of Ganju's, sort of similar to Ganju's idealism, like his visualization technique, but much more constructed and had more reinforcements placed upon it due to his intense ryatsu. So in the visualization technique, there's just much more water and everything, and much more walls containing it. And the walls, think of this as the walls being the border of the spirit ball. Inside is all his spiritual pressure. There's a lot of it, so he has to contain, condense it, compress it, whatever terminology you want to use. And as he does this, he starts to form the spirit ball and control it, and he sees that he can lower and raise the spiritual pressure when needed. So he's not really going to have that similar problem as he did in the canon when they're in the spirit canon and he has to lower his spiritual pressure due to the Uryu or Himage Had's lower and inferior amount of spiritual pressure. He can control that really in this case, or at least somewhat control it, which really wouldn't be a problem for him later on. So as he finishes his exercise, he and the rest of his friends, they would finish it about the same time, and they would all eat dinner really, as he starts to talk to his friends more, and he sort of realizes like they weren't so bad. Obviously it's not in the way I really portray it, but in a way that he does really. And obviously as a young boy, he didn't really actually experience that empathy, or not a lot of the empathy. He has somewhat little bits of empathy, but he's not like some stone cold killer. He'll kill anyone to assert control. But he's, let's say, there's potential, okay, when it comes to the empathy. So, about the next day, the next few days, they would just chill there, really, and they have about 10 days now. And they get ready, right? They're outside and everything as she summons, like, she opens up this hole in the ground, and the spirit cannon starts emerging, and everyone would get in, right? As once they would do that, Kukaku would start it using her clan technique, and they would be flying in the air. Everyone would have the spirit ball manifested as Ichigo, like I said earlier, he wouldn't have as much problem controlling it. So whenever they needed him to reduce his spiritual pressure when they're really close or when they're really high, they're reducing it in the air until they reach it, in which they would then increase it to the max. So that's going to happen here. So they would increase it, Ichigo would increase it to the tip tops that he can, right? The most he can muster without shattering the spirit ball. As they make contact, they go right through, right? And Aizen's watching this from down below, saying, commenting, in his captain-like persona that the barrier has been shattered, and all the walls would start to fall down from the Soul King Palace whenever the barrier is what's the word, has made contact or has been shattered, or I can't think of the word, but it's been compromised. Yeah. So whenever the barrier has been compromised, they come down to protect the Soul King and like the Soul Palace really in general. And as they would come down, they would go down, right? And Ichigo would start to lower his pressure a little bit, and they would then land, right? But unfortunately, they were all separated, just like in canon. So as Ichigo lands, it would take like about 5 minutes, and he would see Ganju like pretty much digging out of the hole he was in from the crater. And as he would get up, he would see Ikkaku and Yumichika running upon the scene. And they're, Ikkaku would comment, they are like, they pretty much found the intruders just by going about a walk, like just like their stroll through the district. And Ganju would say that he's got Chica, and they would sort of run away for space to fight. Ichigo would unsheath his katana, or his Shikai blade. I don't know, I said katana. As he would get ready to fight, getting into a stance and everything. Ikkaku would recognize the stance. It's textbook technique, right? Down to the tiny bits of form. He's done it perfectly. And he would ask him, who is your trainer? And what was his name? As he would say, his name was Ichigo Kurosaki, and his sensei or his master, can't say Sosuke Aizen, so he says Kisuke Urahara. As Ikkaku would nod his head, and he would sort of see something in Ichigo, the same feeling he got when he unlocked the Bankai. It was sort of a gut feeling. And, someone from the 11th squad, they would have a lot of these gut feelings, you call it, as he would sort of smile because he knows either Ichigo is very strong, in some way, and but he knows Ichigo is pretty strong, and he's gonna really enjoy himself here as their battle would start. This is where I'll be leaving off part 3 for What If Aizen Adopted Ichigo. And without further ado, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and peace out. Peace out. Peace out.